Spending my whole life roaming the hills and backroads of West Marin County, I not only developed a sincere love for the outdoors and nature, but a love for the ranches and dairies that scattered across the land. Rolling green hills, oak tree forests, and redwood meadows, the black and white cows seem to fit in so perfectly with the landscape. Even to this day, I spend a lot of my time out west and exploring the land that is, although so close to my house, so very isolated from the rest of the world. Whether I'm admiring and visiting the ranches and dairies, hiking the trails, or riding my horse down the beach, the adventures are endless. When admiring all the picturesque ranches sitting on some of the most beautiful land in the world, hugged by the frigid Pacific Ocean, it is hard to imagine that they have to deal with any kind of major issues or difficulties. But that is so far from the truth. One of the biggest issues many of the ranches in the Point Reyes National Seashore are dealing with is the ever-increasing, uncontrolled, free-roaming Tule elk herds who have affected the livelihoods of the organic dairies. Once roaming the grasslands of the Point Reyes Peninsula and Olema Valley, as well as the rest of California, Tule elk were almost decimated in all of California in the mid-1800s. Since then, they have made a significant comeback. In 1978, in the efforts to reintroduce the elk to the Point Reyes area, 10 elk were transplanted to a 2,600-acre fenced enclosure on Tomales Point called Pierce Point Ranch and protected by the National Park Service. This herd since then has increased into the hundreds. Later, in 1998, 28 elk were taken from the Pierce Point herd to be placed as a free-roaming herd just south of Lemontor Beach. From this new free-roaming herd, some of the elk migrated north across the Drake's Estuary and went on to create a new herd near Drake's Beach, referred to as the Drake's Herd. This is where the issues between the ranchers and elk have uprooted. Ranchers have been able to deal with the minor issues caused by the elk, such as destroyed fences, transmitted diseases, and occasional charged cattle. But the biggest issue the elk have caused for the ranchers is the depletion of natural forage. The majority of the dairies out in Point Reyes are organic dairies. As a requirement to be certified organic, a dairy must have their cattle grazing on pasture for no less than 120 days, a minimum of 30% as their dry matter intake. Pasture is a rancher's cheapest feed source, and for the ranchers in Point Reyes, pasture land is readily available, and having their cattle grazing on it is usually never an issue, as the grass grows green and lush almost 12 months out of the year. However, with the drought and both the elk and cattle grazing the land, the forage is diminished much faster than it would if it was only grazed by managed cattle. This has made it very difficult for the ranchers to keep their cattle on the range for those 120 days or more and abiding an organic requirement. This has caused the ranchers to spend more money on extra feeding, which has then affected their profits and revenues, as well as the livelihood of being an organic operation. Similar to the wild horse issue, it has been difficult for the National Park Service to manage the elk population. Tourists love traveling to the coast, capturing pictures of the majestic animals, and environmentalists believe the elk should not have to compete for resources with the cattle and remain protected, whereas many of the ranchers would love to see the free-roaming herds eliminated from their land. I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy seeing the elk while visiting the coast. However, I would rather see all the ranches and dairies that have been thriving for more than 100 years, nestled in the rolling green hills of West Marin County, to thrive for hundreds of years to come and not be affected by an inconvenient nuisance.